Hello everyone, and welcome to AutoSense. My name is Evangelos Lucky Papageorg. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance of Automotive Service Providers of Massachusetts. We are a collision-based association, and our main goal is to help protect the collision repair industry and make sure that consumers are also protected in that process. The reason that it's so important to us is that the vehicle that you're driving is the very mode of transportation that you're using could be considered pretty deadly at times, and especially if they're not repaired properly. And most people don't get into an accident but once every 7 to 15 years, and they're really not up on repair procedures and all the additional items that you should be concerned with as a consumer here in Massachusetts. Today we're going to focus in on what you should know about your insurance policy, your rights, and what that policy is meant to do for you as far as protection for you and your vehicle should you have any type of a catastrophic issue. I have with me today Nadine Nesbitt of the Purple Ink Insurance Group, and I want to welcome Nadine. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Nadine is uniquely qualified. She's not only an insurance agent here in Massachusetts, but she's also a licensed auto damage appraiser. She has managed body shops, and as I said right now, she is an insurance agent and is very helpful to me in my role as the executive director of the association because of her knowledge on both sides of the issue when it comes to collision repair and the issues that arise when people have an accident. Nadine, a couple of things that we get asked a lot when people come into the body shop and our collision repair facility is what types of things should I be looking for when it comes to purchasing insurance? Should I have an agent? Things of that nature. Maybe you can have our listeners, fill our listeners in on that a little bit.
So there's many different models for your insurance. You could go direct, and that is where somebody purchases a policy directly with a company. So there's no agent. You would call 1-800 something or other, and you'll get somebody who will answer your question. They don't really know you, you're a number, and you don't really know them. There's also direct writers, so that would be a company where you could walk in and work directly with a person at a location, but they only have one company. There's also an independent agent network, which I have belonged to for the last 35 or 6 years, which I prefer because there's many choices, and I love choices. An independent agent usually has several carriers to choose from, depending on the client and what the client's needs are. So I prefer the independent agent network.
Well, that's great. So relationships is something that we really stress a lot when it comes to collision repair. I was always telling my customers, hey, it's nice that you came in and used me this time for the collision repair that you just had, but in the future, stop in and just say hi. I don't want to only see you when you have an issue. So relationships are very important. And the same thing obviously with agents. Having someone who knows you and what your needs are, as you described, is really important. What types of things should people be concerned with when they're looking at coverages? I've seen ads on TV, particular insurance companies feel that you should be able to pick what types of coverages you need. And unfortunately, we've seen when people come into our facilities that they don't always have the coverage they thought they had, be it rental, the limits of their policies and things of that nature. A lot of people don't even understand what a deductible really is. So maybe you can take us through the process of how you advise someone who's a client how to go about picking their coverage.
So everybody's different. There's usually a template of what I would suggest we start out with, and I really think it's important to explain coverages. Most time people don't love their insurance, don't want to talk about insurance, so it's no surprise that they call 1-800 somebody and get a number, a quote, a premium, because you don't know what you need until you need it, unless somebody took the time to have a relationship with you and explain it. And I went to school to be a teacher, and since I didn't go into the teaching field, I feel like, this is an opportunity to teach about insurance. It's counterintuitive to think that better coverage may actually save you money. So that's why it's so important to look at all your choices, or many of your choices. Often if you have higher coverage, insurance companies give you a discount if in the past you've had better coverage, which is interesting. Bundling policies are important. Your home, apartment insurance, along with your car insurance. I've found time over time that combining these policies actually gives you more coverage for less money. Those are important factors. But it gets back to the relationship point you had, Lucky, and I don't think that you can tell somebody what they should have when you don't even know who they are. So it's a fantastic conversation. There are 12 coverages on a mass auto policy, 6 on a homeowner's policy, and 4 on an apartment or a condo policy, 5 on a condo policy. And going through these coverages one by one is fun for me because I know them inside and out. And it's also interesting for the consumer because oftentimes the consumer has no idea what they have to have legally versus what they should have based on their situation. So it gets back to the relationship and learning.
Yeah. Well, same with in a collision repair shop, the liability is huge. And if you don't have the right coverage and, God forbid you're at fault in the loss, you have a huge liability, especially if you're a homeowner, things of that nature. Someone could come after you on a personal basis. Any particular parts of the policy that you feel a consumer should really key in on?
I think all 12, of course, because I'm an insurance agent. But from a licensed auto damage appraiser's perspective, there are 4 coverages that are most important when it's involving the car itself. So there's the coverage to protect yourself if you're injured or if you injure somebody else. But the things that have to do with our cars would be collision. So that pays if your car is involved in an accident where there's a hit. If you're at fault, you pay a deductible. If you're not at fault and you know who hit you, you would not have to pay your deductible in Massachusetts. That's called a waiver of deductible, but we're unusual. We're one of the few states that actually even offers that. Comprehensive is everything else except collision. It'd be fire, theft, vandalism, glass loss, and a deductible applies. Sometimes you can waive a glass loss deductible. Substitute transportation would be very important regarding your car. If all of a sudden your car's in the shop for a month and now the time to fix a car is much longer since parts are harder to get, very difficult to get your staffing so that cars are fixed properly and there aren't long waiting lists. It's important to have substitute transportation, and towing and labor is a wonderful coverage for your car. The next coverage would be property damage, and that's when you damage somebody else's car, or, which we're going to touch on later on, is if you've had an accident and you want to come use my policy, my property damage would pay for your damages if I caused the accident.
Under the third party.
Correct.
Right. So you mentioned the word deductible, and I can't tell you the number of times that I've had to face a consumer or a customer at my shop and have them say to me, well, it's a $500 deductible, so I don't pay that part of it, right? That means that you gave a discount of $500 to the insurance company or whatever. Explain what the deductible is, and I know that there's several ranges of it, so maybe you can point people in the right direction. Is it an economic situation that you should be looking at? What types of things should go into your thought process?
So many different factors for that. So it really has to do with the individual person. If you have 10 vehicles, well, let me back up. To take a bigger risk, you pay less. So if you want a higher deductible, let's say $1,000, the average person would save approximately $150 a year to go from a $500 deductible to a $1,000 deductible under collision. So basically, you're saving $150 to take an extra $500 risk under collision if you go to the higher deductible. Now, based on that, if you had one accident every 4 years, that's not a good deal. Right. Based on the average that you said, 1 in 7 to 15 years, it's a great deal. Why would you want to have this low deductible in case something happens? It's really important for people to understand what that means and how it would impact them. Some people don't have a savings account with $1,000, and that would be horrible. They might not be able to get their car repaired for many months until they save up for the deductible, or they might have to charge it, and now they're going into debt. So it's an important conversation. And again, how can anyone tell you what you should have or suggest something unless I got to know you and asked you some great questions?
Right, well, that's pretty much why I keyed in on that, should you have an agent, should you not have an agent? Because that's a type of advice, and I know firsthand because Nadine does happen to be my agent. She does a great job, and as many agents do. But I know the collision side. I rely on someone with you and your expertise to be able to explain what it is that I should have as coverages.
I wanted to add something on
Sure.
that too. Every company since competition became managed competition in the last decade, companies are allowed to be fun and creative, I guess you could call it. So some companies have lower deductibles that they'll offer you, and you can pay more for lower deductibles, and some will go much higher. Each company has their own appetite.
Right.
So there are many different ones.
So we did explain, though, that the deductible is basically your upfront responsibility if you've had a loss that you were at fault on.
Or hit and run.
Or a hit and run, right. Someone that you obviously can't attribute the loss to someone else's policy under their property damage. So that's what people need to understand is, if the estimate on the vehicle, just to use round figures, was $4,000 and they have a $500 deductible, the only amount they're going to receive from their insurer is $3,500.
They pay their $500 first, and then the insurance company pays above that to finish repairing the car.
Right. So as far as people's rights, let's say under the first party. And well, let's back up a little bit. We talked about the relationship and picking a collision repair facility. I always try to tell people, have in mind before you have the immediate need for a collision repair facility where you want to have your vehicle taken. Because sometimes it's not drivable, obviously, after a loss, and you want to be able to tell the tow facility, hey, I want to have XYZ body shop take care of my vehicle and deal with my insurance company. What types of thoughts do you have on that?
Relationship again. Location would be the next word I'd come up with. And the feeling that you get, sometimes it's a sixth sense. When you walk into a place of business, if you have a favorite restaurant, you get a feeling. You know you're welcome. You know people care. You can see if things are clean. You can see if things are organized. You can see who's on the team and if they are happy that you came in the door. All those things are so important because fixing a car, in my opinion, is all the trades in one. You have electrical, you have plumbing, you have dentistry, filling in damage, it's just bigger. And all these welding, all these different facets, you want to feel comfortable that the people working on your car really care about your safety. That would be the number one thing I would say look for. But all these other factors, the feeling that you get when you walk in the shop. Do you feel like this is the shop that you want to, because you're going to be working with them. It's not a quick process when your car is damaged. There's a lot of moving parts. And you're going to want to be part of the team that makes some of these decisions.
Right. And a key part of that whole repair process is a knowledgeable customer. I mean, someone who comes into me and knows what it is that I need to do to their vehicle, can appreciate the fact that when they look around my shop, there's certificates on the wall that show that we've had certain trainings. To have a customer who is willing to advocate for themselves is a very critical part of the repair, because the insurance industry side is going to try to mitigate their losses, is the terminology that we hear all the time. It's written in the policy. You have to do for the insurance company whatever you can do to help them mitigate their losses. And some of that mitigation comes from insurers trying to get you right after you have a loss to go to a facility that they want you to go to. And again, that's why, my personal opinion is it's very important that you know who is going to be fixing your vehicle should you end up with a catastrophic situation.
I'd like to add to that. When somebody says, well, where should I go? I ask them, have they ever been someplace before? That's important, loyalty. But also I suggest that they ask the shop, are you an AASP-MA member? Members of our association care collectively about one another, and that's an unusual trait in our industry, and it's critical because there's education, there's weekly emails to educate the body shop professionals. So I think that that's another very important factor too.
Well, yeah, it is. As I said, part of our mission is to, not only educate the collision side of the aspect, but the consumer, and making sure that they are going to facilities that are qualified, that understand what the liabilities are that are involved in the repair process. And, a lot of that comes with training. We pride ourselves as an association in bringing all that information forward to our membership. We have a website that consumers can go to, AASP-MA.org. There's a map on that website that they can look at and find facilities all across the state that are being trained, that understand what it means to be part of an alliance, which is right in our name. We're very supportive of each other. We are very concerned as a unit for the consumer in Massachusetts. We diligently fight for legislation that's going to protect the consumer as well as protecting the collision repair industry as a whole.
I wanted to add about your mitigation comment. So insurance companies are one of the most fabulously successful and profitable structures that I've seen in almost 4 decades of business and being involved on both sides. And insurance companies, you talked about mitigating a claim. Of course, there are rules in the policy that you sign up for of things you're supposed to do to help make the claim go easier and help the insurance company to get reimbursed if they can. The great thing is I've never in almost 4 decades had a worry that an insurance company check was going to bounce. However, in order to make that happen, insurance companies do an awful lot of things along the way so that their profitability stays up. It's the name of the game. The company itself, no offense to all you companies out there, are about the bottom line and what's under it. And that's why I think agencies are so important, because it adds another level. Finding a body shop that's knowledgeable and interested in you as a person, it adds that other level that you really don't have when you have a large corporate structure, making sure that the bottom line has lots of numbers under it.
Right, and again, no one wants to, point fingers in a situation when there's any kind of a collision loss. Part of that equation, the collision repairer's responsibility in the process is to make sure that the vehicle is restored properly to its pre-loss condition, which is also the language in the in the insurance policy. Mm-hmm. The policy says that is my obligation. If I am the insurer, I am to make sure that I pay for whatever it takes to restore your vehicle to pre-loss condition. The collision repair facility wants to make sure that when that vehicle is traveling down the road, it travels in the same fashion it did before the loss. Our concern is not just for the occupants of your vehicle after it's been repaired, but everyone that's sharing the road with you. And it gets very frustrating at times because of that focus on the bottom line when insurers say, well, we don't pay for that. Collision repairers know that they take on a huge responsibility if they don't do that part of the repair. Anything from scanning to calibrations, and these are all things that, this program is geared up, and that's what we want to do, is bring that information to the consumer so that they understand every little intricacy when it comes to the repair process, the claims process, and those are the types of things that we will touch on in the future. What should I be prepared to do if I'm involved in an accident? What should I be doing at the scene as far as gathering information and things of that nature? Do you have any other words of advice for people when it comes to picking out types of policies? Or, there's so many concerns. What if you have a young person in your family? Should they have policies of their own and things of that nature?
So again, it's the relationship. That's a big question, and we only have a half an hour, and I could probably talk about that for 3 hours, and you don't want to hear that right now. But it's about the relationship, because everybody is different. Although I usually teach a policy and coverages based on a set of suggestions, that may not be right for you. You might be a commuter. You might really not use your car except on the weekends, and you take public transportation to get to work. Maybe you'll decide not to have substitute transportation because you wouldn't be using your car on a regular basis anyway. But I wouldn't know that unless I talked to you. Hey, what do you do for work? That's not usually on the typical online version of filling out your 1-800 get a quote quick and save $500 in 5-minute quote. So again, it goes back to this is a consumer purchase. And like clothing, you want to enjoy the clothes you're wearing. You're not going to enjoy your insurance policy. I hate to say that. Nobody enjoys paying their premiums. But when something happens, if you have been educated, if you have made decisions based on learning new things and understanding why you bought them, then that is definitely a plus in your favor when it comes time to have something happen. And hopefully it's a waste of money and nothing ever happens, but
well, that's the goal, right?
Right.
It's an insurance policy. Nobody ever wants to have to use the insurance policy. And there are factors, obviously, that depending on the amount of damage that's incurred, and the types of things that we can talk about in future shows, we know that there's rating systems, things of that nature, which all come into play when it comes to having your vehicle repaired. What is the dollar amount? What effect will that dollar amount have on my overall premium going forward? We've heard some horror stories when it comes to what ends up happening to a premium, even if you had just one loss. Not only with your deductible, or if there are aspects of the repair that the insurer insists that they do not cover. And if you're not knowledgeable, and if you don't know what the difference is, if you were struck or if you were the person that was at fault, there's a lot of different things that come into play there. Third-party losses now in Massachusetts also have the ability to collect on what's called IDV, the inherent diminished value, which is new in Massachusetts. Basically, it is something that's covered nationally on both first and third party. Here in Massachusetts, it's been determined that the diminished value, which is what your vehicle, in someone's mind, even though it's been repaired, it's not worth what it would be if it had never been in a loss. So that's that inherent diminished value. And that's actually something that if you were not at fault in the loss, you're able to collect for.
Only under the third party right now in Massachusetts, correct. And that's recent.
Yeah, have you run into that at all? I know it is fairly recent.
A long time, yeah. It's going to be easier going forward now that there's legislature about it, but along the line it was the squeaky wheel getting oiled only. So it's always been allowed, but companies have a way of saying, we don't do that. And so the average consumer hears the big, great insurance companies say, we don't do that, and they never take out their policy to say, oh, we will under this part, and nobody reads their policy. So I'm encouraging everyone to take their policy out and actually read it. Because, again, I'm not bashing companies, it's just the way that they have a healthy bottom line. And when they say things like, we don't do it, most consumers go away. What I have found in the past is the more persistent you are, the more you develop a relationship with the people at the insurance company. They're people too. They're stressed out dealing with everyone that's mad at them for this reason or that reason. But if you can find the right person, oftentimes you can resolve issues like this without it having to go to court and take 2 more years to resolve. And the claims escalate. There's studies that have said if you pay a claim within a certain amount of time, the total value of the claim, the total dollars they pay out essentially, is less than if they take longer to resolve it. So of course everyone's motivated to get you on with your life quickly, get you back into your safe vehicle, pre-loss condition, or if it's total, that's another situation altogether. But this inherent diminished value is really important. A good example is when you go to buy a car, are you going to pay $10,000 for this car that's never been in an accident, or are you going to pay $10,000 for that car that's been repaired? Even if the repair shop was phenomenal, most consumers are going to pick the first one. So that value, what happens now, what is that car worth, is the difference that Lucky's talking about of what the insurance company really owes on that difference. Because you can never have a vehicle be pre-loss after a loss. It's not pre-loss.
It has that stigma to it, and that's part of the things that people do not understand typically, and it is actually a subject matter that we're going to be picking up on a future show. And one of the key things again, and I think you hit on something that's really taken advantage of way too often when it comes to the insured, the consumer, however. And on both sides of the equation. I'm not trying to say that it's just on the insurance side. A knowledgeable consumer is something that has to be out there. You know, we need people to understand when I say something from the collision aspect that I am being truthful. I'm telling you exactly what it is that I need to do. I have the backup documentation. That is my expertise. I am the expert on the collision side of the equation. I'm your doctor for your vehicle. Most people don't question their doctor, but they question collision repairers all the time. Same thing when it comes to the insurance. You know, when it's a collision repair facility saying, hey, look, you know, I've got this documentation, I have to do this particular procedure in order to guarantee my repair, accept the liability. The insurance industry says, no, you know, we don't pay for that. It's not a necessary item. And unfortunately, and we'll touch, I think, on this on future shows, is that dollar amount has an adverse effect potentially on the policyholder. So the insurance company portrays it that they're trying to keep the cost of the repair down to benefit the consumer in the long run, when indeed that may not be the case, that it may end up hurting them in the long run.
I think it would be awesome if we had a sort of a collision 101 for everybody outside of the industry. So if agents could actually go into I think that it's benefited me tremendously from working at collision repair shops. If an agent could go into a shop and spend a day at a shop and really see how difficult these repairs are, how smart the technicians need to be, how challenging it is to get a part, I think that our industry would as a whole be much better, because we all should be working together. Agents should be working with the company and with the customer and with the shop. It should be all of us together. And then the consumer will benefit from that. The same thing from appraisers. Oftentimes, you get licensed as an appraiser, which I am, and unless you've been in a shop, you have no idea what actually goes on. You're just told what you're supposed to do, and you have a computer program to do it. But let's get you really looking at what it looks like to weld a quarter panel. Let's get you to looking at what a wiring harness, how much work goes involved with that. And all those kinds of things are missed opportunities, and it would be fabulous if we could one day come up with something more collaborative.
Yep.
So the consumer would benefit.
Definitely, you know, and it is, you cannot appreciate what it is that goes into the actual repair of a vehicle, and the constant change in technology that we face, not across decades, but now changes are coming so fast and so furious that it's a real challenge for collision repairers to keep up. And again, that's why it's important that the consumer knows in advance. You know, they maybe tour a facility in advance. So again, those are things that we can touch upon on future shows. Really appreciate you being with us here today and helping us bring this information to the people in Massachusetts. Again, we have a website that people can refer to, AASP-MA.org, and we look forward to seeing you at future dates. Thank you.
Thank you.